and welcome to Eye to Eye, the interview show for high flyers. My guest today is a pioneer of punk, a celebrated designer and an ambassador for change. Meet Vivienne Westwood.
Irreverent, eccentric and visionary, Vivienne Westwood is the godmother of punk and a globally revered designer. She left school at 16 and started a fashion revolution, bringing fetish wear, mud and witches to the catwalk. She transformed attitudes and society, smashing convention and making fashion bolder and fearless. The Queen made her a dame for her contribution to the industry. Today, Vivienne is an earnest campaigner for the environment. She believes people are an endangered species. For the next 30 minutes, Vivienne Westwood is our very lively captive in a capsule on the London Eye, where Francine Lacroix attempts to keep pace with her.
Vivienne, thank you so much for being on the London Eye. Talk to me a little bit about your beginnings. How did you become a fashion designer?
I started in 1970, and at that point my boyfriend was Malcolm McLaren, and he was an art student at that time, and he had the idea that he wanted to sell rock and roll records to trendy people, because you'd never ever heard rock and roll. And I would say that 1970 was the beginning of an age of nostalgia. And for me, it was me looking back at my own lifetime's culture and deciding what did we like about it. The hippies were kind of more or less finishing. You know, even though America was still in Vietnam, we were not so interested in the hippie movement anymore. And so it was the idea of rebellion. What was the rebellion of your life, somehow? And he wanted to do fashion, and I could help him. And so I started making clothes for him, and to fulfill his ideas. And we went back to the 50s. He decided that's where the rebels were. And so we sort of began in that time.
And what was it like living in London at the time?
Well, it was in hippie times. We were doing rock and roll teddy boy look, quiffed hair and whatever it was, pointy bras, when all the other people were hipster trousers, satin flares, platform shoes, and there we were in stilettos, and eventually started to wear rubber clothes and all kinds of sort of fetish stuff as well.
But was that more for being anti-establishment? Was it, again, a political message, or was it just things that you liked?
He did see it like that, and I at that time was very, very anti-establishment. I still am, but I was just outraged at the torture and the mismanagement and the hypocrisy of what was going on in this world, and we hated the older generation. It's like your fault, you know, like kids wouldn't do that. Nowadays I think differently. As a matter of fact, my ideas now are probably 180 degrees opposed to what they were then.
Why?
But,
What's been the main difference, that you don't hold it against the previous guys in charge? Are we all responsible with what's happening?
Well, why is that different? Let me just think. Let's just say that at the point of punk rock, that's when I realised that you need ideas. We had sort of evolved to a point where we sort of invented punk rock, you see, as well. And when Malcolm was running the Sex Pistols, soon after that I met my Italian manager, and I can explain it like that. He said, look, you think fashion's really important. You want to throw some rocks at the establishment. He said, imagine the establishment's a car and it's going 100 miles an hour. He said, you can throw whatever you like about it, it'll go faster with your energy. He said, what you need to do is go 200 miles an hour. And so I thought, that's incredible. You have to forget the establishment. It's not a wall you're kicking. If you've got ideas, you have to go and beyond. You have to go into the future. You have to go into the future and present your ideas. By the way, my fashion, hold on, my fashion is, by the way, a sort of very literary thing. It's always in a kind of parallel universe, somewhere in the future. How can we look even more wonderful than we do now?
Vivienne Westwood is the ultimate British icon. Her unconventional fashion shaped society for more than 4 decades. making punk stylish and England taboo-free. She is a passionate advocate of human rights, environmental protection and culture. She says people should buy less after choosing well, and says a lack of culture is putting society deeply at risk. Unconventional to the core, Vivienne Westwood is on the London Eye telling Francine Lacroix why heritage and future should go hand in hand.
When I was 17, my family moved to London, and I started to find out things about the world, and I started to go to art galleries, and at the time the hippies had politicised my generation, and we did know about what was going on in Argentina, and I was very anti-Queen in those days because I thought she was a symbol of our hypocrisy in England. I'm not a patriotic person, I never have been, but I love her. I think she's great now, I've changed about that.
Because she's been stable?
I think if we didn't, here we are looking at the whole of London and everything, we wouldn't feel the same about this at all if we didn't have the Queen. We'd be like everybody else. And I just think that somehow social cement is really important. It's the right kind of patriotism, if you like. She does an incredible job. She's very self-effacing woman, a humble person. She does her duty. And I think Prince Charles is absolutely brilliant. He's done more for the human race than any politician.
I'd like to understand what drives you to be a fashion designer.
When I was a child, I was always puzzled and always felt a bit guilty because I was constantly touted as this creative child. And I thought, well, I'm only copying things. What do they mean by creative? Only God can create things. I was religious in those days. And you know, today people don't think that. They think that somehow, you know, you mustn't know anything about the past. You must just create from nothing. And this is nonsense, and this is why we don't have anything really happening. We don't have any ideas going through creative channels at all today, because people overthrew the past, but that's another subject. The 20th century was a mistake. All we had to do was keep in touch with all the latest ideas, hop on the bandwagon. The future's going to be brilliant, everybody's going to get richer. We don't have anything to do except be trendy, you know. Anyway, and so it was a mistake. So I've gone into that area now, but fashion, yeah.
When you say 20th century is a mistake, is it because people actually don't take on board the layers of centuries that we as humans and humanity have? Is that the problem that we also have today, which is why we consume more?
Yes.
We save less, and therefore maybe humans are become a little bit more stupid.
Well, Henry Ford summed it up. He said history is bunk, and everybody can have 2 cars or 1 car or whatever. You know, I mean, it was just let the machine take over. It was just this mechanistic acceptance and go along with it, and at the same time, you know, have more and more material comfort. It's really true. I'm glad.
But is that not the fashion world, also what the fashion world represents, which is why it's interesting to have a designer, and refreshing to have a designer which does fashion, but at the same time has very strong political messages to pass on, and does also a lot of charity in Africa?
Well, now then, I'm just going to step back from that question and answer it in this way. I think fashion is life-enhancing, and it's what human beings can do. Human beings, animals can't do this. They're cross-wired human beings. Empathy. They can put themselves in the place of other people. They can imagine themselves in the future. They can understand the past by transferring in this way. It's the way we think. It's all insight and how we understand things. And we're also cross-reference. We can make a picture out of looking at you. I can take a piece of paper and try and draw you, and then maybe you say, yeah, that's her, Francine, that's it. Hold on, we can dance to music. Let me finish this point. And so I just think that wearing clothes is to give people the chance to become more human, to decorate themselves, to flatter who they are, to have something to represent, you know, augmentation to represent your personality, to make yourself more charming, more beautiful, more elegant. And I believe in fashion. I think it's great. I don't like cheap, quick out, stamp out, rubbish and clone-like look.
Meet Vivienne Westwood, the anti-establishment figurehead turned national treasure. The godmother of punk is one of the most authoritative fashion designers of all time. Her collections have provoked and inspired generations across the world. To A-list celebrities, she's the designer of choice. World-class museums host retrospectives on her work, and the Queen made her a dame. Today, Vivienne Westwood is committed to fighting climate change and poverty. She's donated more than $1 million to the cause. Vivienne Westwood is on the London Eye telling Francine Lacroix how fashion can be socially responsible.
Talk to me a little bit about your charity work, which is not really charity work, because you do a line which basically gives work to people in Africa. How did this project start?
They came to me to design things so that it would give work to people. And for example, a Maasai tribesperson, there might be a Maasai collar in the airport shop, but they're not going to sell many Maasai collars because they don't sort of fit with our Western dress very easily. And so I can design something that is just a wristband or something, and it's got sex written on it in beads. And I can sell lots of them, you know, like a kind of wristband or stuff like that. But mostly we make bags. And I just need to say as well that the bags are recycled. The centre of this operation is in Nairobi.
And they recycle everything.
Yeah, they make things out of old tents, and the rubbish dump there is the source of income for the whole slum of Nairobi. The greatest perks are the trays from airports, apparently, the food trays from airports. Everything is recycled. They make stuff out of jewellery, out of bones, out of everything. Within 2 seasons, we had helped bring 700 people out of poverty, mostly women. And for example, a woman might be the sole earner for the whole extended family. You know, her husband might have lost his cattle in a drought or something, and the money is coming from them.
But it's through culture that we need to better ourselves as humans.
That is my opinion. I think we're dangerously short of culture. And what I mean by culture is an engagement with the human world. What I want to say about culture is that it is the province of the avant-garde culture. It's never popular, but it has the potential to be popular.
How do you make it popular?
It has the potential to be popular to the extent that people invest in it. You can't just go to the art gallery, been there, seen that, don't need to go again. You know, you have to start to become absorbed, and you have to follow your deep interest.
But so are we...
And nobody's doing that. We've been taught to suck up. We've been trained up as consumers.
Consumers and also celebrity watchers. And you were telling me...
I think that this is why we're so dangerously short of culture, because we've substituted the idea of culture with all this pseudo stuff. And the biggest problem there is non-stop distraction. Fill your head with one thing after another, and you won't think. And then, of course, you can be more manipulated.
And you think this is manipulation also from the finance side of things, that the mess we're in economically is something that we've brought upon ourselves?
The biggest problem is climate change. Yeah, just talk about that in a minute. But the biggest problem is climate change, and that is caused by the crazy financial structure that we have. We have no more resources left. This is why whenever somebody says that talks about growth, growth is not possible until we change that financial structure. Let's hope that a clever politician or a genuine politician who has principles might speak to somebody. Can I just finish this point? Which would be they say to people, you know, growth is not possible under the scheme of things at the moment. And what we have to do is replace the idea of profit with human values.
40 years have passed since the punk revolution, but Vivienne Westwood remains passionate to the core. Her iconoclastic style made her an icon, and her business keeps expanding. The godmother of punk is on the London Eye telling Francine Lacroix why there's simply no fashion without China.
How do you see yourself, as an activist or as a fashion designer?
Fashion is my job. We could talk about that. I always shy away from it. I mean, when I'm doing, I use my fashion shows even to talk about political things. People will say to me, please can you tell me the inspiration for this job? I say, no, I have to talk about climate change or whatever. My credibility as a fashion designer helps to give me a voice about all the political, environmental problems that I wish to talk about. And you were asking me before, by the way, if I'm a political person. And I would say that a political person is somebody who wishes to influence people. And I do think that I have an advantage over most political people, that I've spent an awful lot of time trying to work things out. Opinions have to be formed. You know, they're not just a whim or something to just self-serve or something, you know. And so I do spend a lot of time trying to influence people, it's true.
Talk to me about your company. Is there a lot of pressure on actually, you know, continuing to be creative?
My company expands. I now employ 250 people. Last year I employed 150 people. And I really, you know, I've spoken to my manager, and we cannot keep expanding. It's to do with China mostly. The whole economy of the fashion business is kept buoyant at the moment because of China. It would be not. I mean, 3 or 4 years ago, the wool industry, they thought it was going to stop. You know, they were selling sheep's wool as mulch for gardens. Nobody wants wool anymore. Now suddenly they want it. Harris tweed, it's all working again. Okay, so what about the final question? I know, don't keep looking at me like you want me to shut up. I've got to carry on.
I'm concerned about the announcement.
I know. Oh, okay. Anyway, yeah. So it's very difficult not to expand. If you don't expand, you go the other way. I'd kind of like to go the other way. I would need to explain the whole mechanism of how fashion works in order to explain all this, but I will sum up with what I'm saying by saying that all I'm trying to do mostly is to grow with quality, not with quantity. That is my, because then I want the control over what I'm doing, yeah? And my core business is this gold label fashion. It's great. It's totally subsidised by all the spin-offs. You know, if people buy this, it should cost 10 times more than it does. It already costs a fortune, but it should cost 10 times more. And at one time, at the time of Chanel, they would have had those customers. Yeah. But now it has to have all these spin-offs. And to control all of that is very, very difficult. So I'm trying to put quality into it all the time. Did I say that money is debt? I don't think I did.